Welcome to another episode of Unapologetic Me, a space where we explore the journeys of people who are building meaningful lives and careers, not just by following conventional rules, but by staying deeply aligned with who they really are. Today's guest brings a perspective that feels incredibly relevant for the times we're living in. Vansha Garg has spent over 14 years in human resources working across organizations such as Times Network, India Today Group, Vian, and PVR Cinemas. She currently serves as General Manager, HR Business Partner at Times Network, where she leads talent strategy, organization culture, and leadership development. But what makes her journey particularly fascinating is that somewhere along the way, HR stopped being just about systems, policies, and performance reviews. It became about something deeper: understanding people beyond their resume, understanding the emotions, fears, beliefs, and patterns that quietly shape the way we live and work. A turning point came when she attended a workshop on AI in HR, where she realized that while technology may soon automate many operational aspects of work, there is one dimension that machines cannot replace, which is the human side of leadership. That realization led her towards a deeper exploration of people, conversations around self awareness, and helping individuals become the best versions of themselves. Today's conversation is about leadership, mindset, identity, and what it really means to build a workforce that is emotionally grounded and self aware. On that note, Vansha, I'm so excited. Thank you for giving us the time on your calendar. Can't wait to begin the conversation with you.
Likewise, thank you so much for such a wonderful introduction. And you took me back to the days when I actually was dreaming of all of this, which you just said about me. So thank you so much. Thank you so very much for having me here on your podcast.
Alrighty, let's get started. We're going to give you enough instances when you can relate and figure out the stories, and we will just be glad to touch all aspects of your career journey. All right, let's
Okay.
go. Now,
Yeah.
before we talk about leadership and people, I want to go back to where your story really began. You grew up in a small town where women traditionally had very defined roles. What did that environment look like, and how did it shape the way you imagined your future?
Yeah, so we belong to a very small place, and we had a joint family of approximately 30 people who used to live together. There were four kitchens under the same roof, and there were small family bunches who were living together. But since the time I could remember my days from that house, I always saw very defined role for men and women in that house. All right, so all the men would get up, and all the women would also get up and would try to make things easy for men in the house. They need to leave, so they women had to cook. They need to go for work, so they had to pack the lunches. They had to make sure the clothes were done well and the house was looking fine. Whereas the men had just one role to go out, work, and come back and relax. So I always used to question this, in my head, that what if I don't want to do this? What if I want to go and not just cook meal for somebody else, or probably just spend my entire day in just fixing the house, or probably gossiping? So I used to always question this, that is my gender really defining that what exactly am I supposed to lead my life, or is the choice in my hands? So I always used to sit and observe, and always when I was in fact playing with my cousins also, this question was always there in my head, that what if I want to choose differently?
Hmm.
So yeah, that was a time that, because it was so clearly defined and everybody was doing their own roles, I always wondered, will I be able to choose for myself, or will I have to just go by what is society asking me to do?
All right, perfect. Like you said that you observed. Let's bring you to your mother. You've said that your mother was the first working woman in the household while we were doing some research. Did watching her step into that role quietly change the way you thought about a mission?
Okay, so when all of this was happening in my head, that, you know, uh, why is this so a certain way? Then, I very clearly remember looking at my mother differently. And not only me, everybody in the household also used to look at her very differently. Because probably she was the first woman, we had in the family who actually had those roles, but also decided to do something beyond that. And I would hear people in my house saying that, we can't tell if she's beautiful more or intelligent more. So
Oh
that
my
was a
God.
proud moment for me as a child, that everybody talks about my mother a little differently than comparative to the other women in the house. I'm not saying they were not accomplished or they were not doing well in their lives, but that extra edge that she had in her personality, due to which she actually built a career of her own, always made me proud of her. And then, slowly and gradually, I actually, from the actions that she had, I realized that, okay, fine, the choice is in our hands. We can still do this and do, more that we want to do. So, yes, of course, that was my first stepping stones of understanding that what a career woman looks like, and understanding that how exactly I want to look like when I grow up. And I used to copy her in everything, how she used to walk, how she used to dress up, how she used to talk, how she used to influence people. So it was a running school within the household for me that this is what I want to become.
This is so beautiful. But tell us, growing up in an environment with limited examples of women building independent careers, like you mentioned, because that's how your mom stood out, where did your confidence come from? We heard about your mom, but was there also any other influence, and how did the confidence stemmed in you?
See, this happened when I was in first standard, and I my mom decided that there were not enough schools, great schools in the vicinity, so she decided to send me to a very far off place, which was again very new thing for our kind of society. So she started sending me to a school wherein everybody questioned my parents that why exactly are you sending her 2 hours away to a school, that too in first standard. So I always used to think that why is it a problem and why is everybody questioning my parents for this? Because in joint families, people do have this behavior wherein, they want to actually poke their nose and tell the other person that, okay, fine, this is not right, this is not the way to be, because they have a certain way and they are conditioned in a certain manner to think of a situation like this. So I remember that it felt different to me at that point in time also, because my mother and father were very firm that they had to send me to a good school, and that good school actually made a lot of difference in my life. No matter how difficult it was for me to actually, the journey was very difficult. I had to wake up 2 hours early than any other child in my house and go, and of course my way back was also very difficult. But I met a teacher there. I still am searching for her on Facebook and I'm not able to. Her name was Rakhi. I don't remember the surname. Her name was Rakhi, and she actually saw something different in me. And she actually told my mother that your child is very brilliant, and I want her to cast in a multiple level of this thing programs in our school. Would you be okay sending her for a longer period of time in this school? So my mother was always supportive of this, but after my mom, whenever I used to look at that woman, the way she was a principal of the school, the way
Hmm.
she actually walked, the way she spoke, the confidence, the smile. So I used to observe all of these minute things in her, and her decision making, and how brilliantly she was able to manage it all together, how brilliant she was in actually, identifying the potential of her smallest possible child in the room. That
Hmm.
was something very beautiful in her, and that's how probably she figured out that I was good at dancing. And rather than casting me for one dance or two dances, she actually casted me approximately in 18 performances in single
What?
annual function day,
Oh,
and the
wow.
total number of performances were approximately 30. So it was like that after every second performance, it was my performance happening. And they built a story, over my life. So I was a character, and over my life, there was a story how this child goes to the school. Then there was a song. The child actually sleeps in the night listening to a story. There was a song. So there were 18 performances that had happened at that point in time, and she actually believed in me. And for me, it was just fun that was happening, and I was just doing my performance. But she actually found out that quality within me,
Hmm.
told my mother to keep on working me as a as a project, and make me reach my highest potential. So this was another very influential, from my childhood, very influential personality that I still am searching for. I hope I meet her once again someday. But yeah.
I hope she'll listen to the podcast and she'll be like, and she'll be so much, how do I say it? She'll be so proud. I mean, shout out is just a small thing, but it says a lot to have people early on in your life who are able to put that kind of attention and who are giving so much of a interest in developing those talents which you've probably not realized early on, but
Absolutely.
goes a great deal. But I'm gonna spin the question here and I'm gonna ask Vansha, was there ever a moment where you doubted whether you're allowed to want more? Now, I attended a conference yesterday and it was a women conference because it's a Women History Month. There was this one female at a very senior position, extremely accomplished, but she still had this question which came time and again in her head, asking that does she deserve to be in the room she's in? And I think we as women, we tend to question ourselves, our ability a lot. What do you have to say about this?
I think that's a very human nature that whenever, we're trying to do something new or something different in our lives, it's a very common saying that it is hard until it is easy. So whenever I was trying whatever I was doing in my life, the first emotion around it was, will I be able to do it right? Can I do it properly? There's so many people out there who are already doing this better than me. Then what do I bring to the table? So these questions were always, and I feel that these questions always spin in a person's head. So I would really say that it wasn't like I was questioning, am I allowed to do more or am I allowed to ask more? But yes, I was most of the times and many a times asking, am I doing enough to deserve this, or do I need to do a little more to be a part of this group, or be a part of this organization, or be a part of this community?
All right, perfect. Very nicely answered, as we expected. I'm going to take you to the corporate side now. You stepped into the corporate world and spent over a decade navigating large organizations. You worked with companies like Times Network, India Today Group, and YON. What did those environments teach you about people that textbooks never could?
I really learned how complex a human can be.
Do tell.
So I actually, I would have days wherein, back to back, one after the other, I would meet different personalities. Usually, when you are not in a media setup, you would still find people of the same kind of, working style, personality, and, professionalism. But here in media, the people that you are dealing with have are so dynamic and so complex that, during my journey with the media people, I actually understood that how exactly am I able to understand these people. For example, I would have a crime reporter and I would have a spiritual reporter.
Wow.
Both of the people are journalists, but both of them would have a different dialect, would have a different way of treating, would have a different way of talking, would have a different way of reacting to a situation. Everybody would have their different set of questions. So when I worked with media organization for this long, I approximately 17 years now, I realized that, all of these people are bound by similar policies, similar processes, but still everybody is so different from each other. And as HRs of media, we are just not here to tell them that these many leaves you would get. This is the reimbursement filing portal which is available here, and this is the organogram of the company, and that's it. The complexity of human being and understanding their emotions, this is something I learned while I was working with different set of people in media industry.
Interesting. Okay, now HR often sits at the center of some of the hardest decisions in the organizations, like hiring, firing, conflicts, and politics. Question is, what is something about corporate culture that most people outside leadership completely misunderstand?
I have realized over the years that people often assume decisions in the organizations are very simple. They would just purely decide, HR and management would just purely decide upon the performance of an individual, the situation, and then they would just decide and say things and decide whether this person is a certain way or not. But when you sit at the center of the table as an HR, and for years I've been doing this, I actually saw that how layered it was. Every decision had multiple dimensions. It had business priorities, it has team dynamics, it has long term strategy, fairness to the individual you had to keep in mind. So it was just not the performance of an individual that only and solely matters. There are so many other things that needs to come in. And what may look like as a very straightforward decision from the outside actually often involved a lot of thought, responsibility, and sometimes very, very difficult trade-offs. So it's not easy to sit at the table and decide in just one go, because we are talking about people's career here.
Alrighty, talking about decisions, what has been one of the toughest people decisions you've had to make in your career by far?
Uh,
With me.
this one time, the organization actually hired. I won't name the organization.
Sure.
Actually hired a piece of they created a bunch of people. Sorry, this one time an organization actually designed a team, and there was a lot of aspiration from this team, and we actually wanted a lot of output from that team. After pepping them up for good 6 months, I got to know that while this team was all pepped up to launch, we had to shut down the project. And because I was working upon with this team so closely, and every single person we had picked chosen from various parts of the country, because the project was such that we needed dynamic individuals. It was very difficult for me to actually break it to them that the project that they were so dearly working upon is shutting down. It's not their problem, but we'll have to let them go. So
Yeah.
sometimes things are not in our control, and something like this when happens to passionate people,
Mm.
it feels like a heartbreak to HRs also.
Oh, that's so very nicely said. Okay, when you look at the corporate world today, do you think companies fully understand their people or are mostly operating just at the surface level? Your thought.
I think companies are trying to understand their people. I won't say that they fully understand it or they don't, but I feel that right now the organizations needs to evolve. Some are evolving already. It's not that all organizations are behaving in a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
but some organizations needs to evolve and understand that handling people is no longer about creating a good policy, creating a good process, or a tool for them to operate upon. These are the basics that any organizations has to offer to them. But what exactly needs to be done is that beyond the performance, how is this person actually doing in their own life? What exactly are they wanting from the organization, in terms of a work life balance, in terms of a mental peace, mental satisfaction, growth path. So these all things, the soft things have to come together, and beyond the sheets we have to actually look at the individual, because one can be a good performer at work and also a very good mother at home,
Mm.
and as well as a very beautiful dancer in her community, and as well as a very good podcaster when she's been spoken to. So we cannot just define a person's personality basis one Excel sheet and a performance criteria at work, because how you do one thing is how you do everything, I believe. If I'm excellent in getting up and making my bed, making my breakfast, dealing with my kids, navigating all the traffic related problems in my mornings, and then at work, giving a kick-ass performance, it's an excellence that is my basic core value system. So how I actually am as a human being, I will be turning out as a professional just similarly like that.
I just hope many HR professionals are listening to you, and I just hope this is the kind of criteria when you're evaluating an individual, because, like you said, all areas have to be thought through. It's just not about, like you mentioned, about the sheets. I really like that quote. I'm going to use that in promotion of this episode, though. All right, we're going to talk about the AI segment. Something interesting happened as we covered in your intro as well, a workshop on AI that shifted how you saw your own profession, HR. You attended a workshop on AI in HR that sparked a big realization for you. Tell us what exactly clicked in that moment.
So this was about 2 years back when AI was entering our lives,
Mhm.
and we were all learning what exactly AI is and how exactly is it going to impact. So my organization sent a couple of people, to attend AI workshop to actually make us all understand that AI is not going to take away the jobs. AI is only going to take away the jobs who don't adapt to AIs.
Hmm.
So that was the moral of the story. And when for the first time I sat in the room, and it was full of all the senior HR leaders, across the industries, and we were all sitting there, and there was the presenter who was telling us all the new tools and modules and modalities that have come into the picture with the back support of AI, how fast our work will become. So you will
Hmm.
not have to actually spend hours in scanning through. That technology was already there, but I'm saying if in case you had to actually interview a person, they showed us a demo wherein they interviewed a person, and that interview was over, and within 2 minutes of time period, that AI could tell how many fillers that person used, how many times the eye movement was different, how many times the eyebrows were raised, how many times the person smiled, and how many times the person was actually feeling a little jittery while answering.
Oh,
From the
wow.
tone and the facial expressions, AI could understand all of those things. And there were so many other things, not only about hiring, but also about rest of the aspects of our work that we do in an organization. There were so many tools that the person showed us, and while I was actually watching all of this with a lot of fascination and interest, that okay, fine, this is going to really help us better. One thing I realized at the same time, that given come what may, given whatever competence AI brings into our lives, it will actually never be able to change the human touch to a conversation. When an employee comes to an HR all burnt out and all unable to figure out what's going wrong in his life, and how he should be deciding upon whether to quit the job or to stay and look for a career path, that's something AI is actually not going to do for us. And that's when I started thinking about it more often, I realized that while I will be picking up on all of these things, I really needed to learn more.
Hmm.
Time beyond the titles, beyond the designations, I really needed to understand emotions. What exactly goes on in a person's head when the person decides to make a move from an organization?
Hmm.
How exactly a person reaches a stage of a burnout?
Hmm.
What goes wrong? Everybody is trying to give their best, then what goes wrong between two team members, that one person is actually having such huge grievance against the other one? So these are the things that I thought that I want to learn all of these life skills. And that's when I went into studying more about it, and then that's how life coaching happened. So I did my certification last year itself, and I would say that it stole my heart.
Okay.
I actually, it stole my heart, and I became a different person altogether myself. And it's so beautiful that since the time I have learned all of those things, the way I talk to people, the way I entertain them, the way I am really interested in listening to their smallest of the problem has changed. And because that has changed, the way people approach me as HR has changed. Now
Hmm.
people only don't come to me that I didn't get the right appraisal. They would also come to me that my mother-in-law is forcing me to quit the job because last month I had a miscarriage. Please help me. How do I navigate the situation?
You're
So
the
yeah,
first person who's telling me um, how she actually paid a lot of attention towards the emotional side of people after coming out from an AI workshop. Everyone
yes.
here has been learning about the tools and the software and programming, but I think you bring such an honest perspective that people are chasing and running behind all of those tools. Everyone needs to up their game. What they're not focusing on is actually the human aspect. So I'm just so glad we're getting to have this conversation, and you've brought a different perspective altogether.
Thank you.
We did speak about how you mentioned about AI is easy. AI can pick on the nuances when someone's been interviewed about the eye contact and how someone behaved. But my question to you is, do you think technology is making workplaces more efficient or less human? What do you feel?
I think it's doing both.
Hmm.
It's actually making the workplaces more efficient and
Okay.
people less human.
Okay.
And it is happening, simultaneously. So on the efficiency side, HR today can manage everything through tech. Hiring is automated, attendance, productivity is tracked in real-time basis. Performance reviews come from data and dashboards, and even engagement surveys are instant. Things that, it used to take us sometimes weeks. I remember a time very early in my career when we had to close appraisals. Sometimes we stayed overnight because we were doing things so manually that it
Yeah.
was not possible to roll out all the letters and do everything with such perfection, in case you had not clocked in extra hours. Right now, at just one click, you can do whatsoever is required. So of course it is making the workplace, very, very, very efficient. Writing an email has become so easy, and so many things. My mother uses, Chat GPT these days to actually sort out the most basic problems that she has in her life. But at the same time, it is also making people very less of human,
Hmm.
because right now we are running from one task to another, and we are not really taking a pause and understanding that what is it that, if in case as a human being I had to put a perspective to, what would I think and say about it. For example, an AI will only follow a command that a person drops a performance, and this is the outcome. 1 month of PIP, and then another month exit, and you hire another person. This is a very process oriented way of doing it. When an HR intervenes into this, you also see that whether the performance went drop because the person had a fractured parent at home,
Hmm.
whether this person was actually going through some mental turmoil.
Hmm.
And but right now, because we are completing tasks back to back, we
Yeah.
don't really pause and think of the situation, go back into the data and that meeting, probably at the coffee that I had with that person, wherein that person sounded so very passionate towards her job. Why exactly is this person behaving this ways now? Why has the performance gone down? AI would not be able to do that. So, because people have to complete the task efficiently and very quickly, because nobody can come back to them and ask them that why didn't you do it? So
Hmm.
that nobody can come back to them. They just want to just become less of human and just complete the task and move on to the other one.
I just want to wrap this answer, as you've mentioned, by saying that everyone should have a one chat office. So she understands the human side, and it's just not what you feed to the Excel sheet and complete your appraisals or send your performance reviews and everything, because there's a human side, there's a person who's working, and there are different emotions that go day in, day out. So spend some time and think about maybe having more vanchas around. Alrighty. Okay. We're going to slide you into the segment which is called the inner work, because I feel this is where your journey becomes really interesting, because your focus area started shifting inwards through it and towards people's thoughts and beliefs. So the question is, well, you started exploring people not just through their skills or degrees, but through belief systems and emotional patterns, like we just heard from you. We understand that it was AI which was a benchmark, but what really sparked that curiosity? Now, you already mentioned about the AI workshop, but I'm sure there goes something which was already seeding up, which got to that workshop, and then you eventually took the leap.
So I was listening to a lot of podcasts, very lately, in 2025, I had a schedule, I had a routine wherein in the morning for 1 hour drive and while going back home for 1 hour drive, I would have a certain playlist and I would play that. And, gradually in that playlist, a lot of law of attraction, a lot of manifestation, a lot of frequency related topics, vibration related topics came in. And that's when I realized that, when I was listening to all of those things, I initially did not believe to all of this, honestly speaking. I thought this is just one segment of, society which believes in a certain way, and that they can be, their way. But then that, deeper instinct to know more about it, because this was such a fascination for me to actually understand that how law of attraction works and is this even real, brought in a researcher side of me. And when I started researching a lot about these things, from that I navigated into understanding human energies, aura, and emotions, and how our thoughts are creating our reality, and how exactly can we create what we assume, and how can we decide an emotion of the day, and we can actually have a day according to that emotion. So initially these were just concepts for me. Then forcefully I started following all of these concepts in my personal
Forcefully.
life. Yes, forcefully, because I wasn't able to really surely, in fact, tell it to somebody that I am trying to actually follow this through, because I thought that people would say that she's gone mad and she's doing things
Hmm.
which belong to a certain community. So I thought, let me just try for this.
Hmm.
So I started off writing my gratitude journal. I started off understanding more about law of attraction, how vibrations work, how exactly frequencies actually, creating everything that is happening around me. and how exactly disempowering and empowering emotions work with a human being. How exactly in a certain situation, two different human beings can have a total different experience.
Hmm.
So I understood all of those things, and of course, through that, I got into life coaching because I wanted to learn more and I wanted to formally learn it. I learned a lot of modalities around it. That how, so very interestingly, I understood a concept called E plus R is equals to O, wherein E is an event, R is my response, and O is the outcome. And I learned very beautifully that if the event is always neutral, bad or good, the event is always neutral. My response to that event is actually going to decide my O.
Hmm.
If I'm certain that my response that I want, my outcome that I want from this certain situation, I will only have to change the response and I can design it for myself. When I started practicing these things, so whenever there was a fight at home, I would change my R. Whenever there was a little dissatisfaction happening at the workplace, I would just change my R. And slowly and gradually I started off changing my R's very often, and it became my habit. Even if there were people standing in my room and shouting at each other and also trying to shout at me back, I only focused on my R. And the day I learned it, that how exactly my R is changing my O's, I could have control of over my O's very beautifully.
This is profound. This is profound. And I'm sure initially you would have faced a lot of resistance because the thought process is very, very different. But to actually keep practicing from something which you just started from a podcast, this is wow. I'm running at the loss of
Thank
words,
you.
but I think wow explains.
Yeah.
Okay, tell us when people begin opening up about their fears and doubts to you, what do you notice most commonly holding them back? Is there a pattern you observe?
Yes. So initially, obviously, mm, I used to struggle dealing with
Wait,
people.
stop. We missed. You have to start from the very beginning. I don't know what just happened with the voice.
Okay. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, one second. Uh, okay, when you begin opening up, sorry, when people begin opening up about their fears and doubts, what do you notice most commonly holding them back? Is there a pattern you observe?
Absolutely. And it was a very common pattern that I observed, which
Okay.
was that people actually chose something on their own
Hmm.
and they looked for external reasons to justify why they cannot have the other thing they are also craving. In simpler words, I would come across a person in my session wherein the person would say that I want to go back and travel,
Hmm.
but my job is not allowing me to travel.
Hmm.
I asked, why is your job not allowing you to travel? They say that because my role is such that I can't leave the job to travel to the place that I want to, but I can't leave the job because I have to take care of my children's education, and upbringing, and all of those things. So I asked that person, isn't it that you have chosen for yourself? That is a choice that you have made, that you want to send your kids to a certain school. That is a
Hmm.
choice that you have made, that you want to maintain a certain living standard by having a certain house, a certain car, a certain designation. So this is a choice that you have only made. Nobody came to you and asked you that you have to keep probably a Fortuner. You could have done with a cycle also, right? So
Hmm.
that's a choice that you made, that you wanted to thrive in your career, put an effort in your career because you want to send your child to a certain school and have a certain lifestyle. At the same time, you have another choice that you want to make, which is of traveling, which is contradicting with your current choice, because both can't happen as per you. However, it can happen, but that person said can't happen. So I was just trying to solve that issue for them. I said, that's your P1. Your job is your P1. Your traveling is your P2. Both are your choices only.
Yeah.
You can very well make your P2 your P1 and your P1 your P2. In both of the cases, it's you only who's deciding. Then
Hmm.
why are you blaming the organization, the boss, the external circumstances, and everybody around you but you for not being able to travel?
Hmm.
So
Acha.
that person, so when actually I told him this, I said nobody is going to put a gun on your head if in case tomorrow you pack your bags and leave. It's a choice that you're not making because you don't want to miss out on your next month's salary, about the
Hmm.
stability that you have from this job. So you only decide your P1s, P2s, and P3s and P4s, but because of your P1, you're not able to do your P3s and P4s, you blame and you look for evidences in your outside environment. So,
Yeah.
and that's a very common pattern, and people do this very often. A housewife would blame in-laws or a husband or sometimes children for not being able to make a career. No, that was your P1. You wanted to stay home, take care of the baby, didn't want to send the baby to the daycare, which was a great choice.
Hmm.
And that was your choice. Don't
Yeah.
blame other people for that.
I feel like sometimes in the whole journey of moving through your day, wanting to do grass is always greener on the other side, you forget that these decisions have also been taken up by you, right? You made the choice, which is very nicely you highlighted. Brings me to the next question. Do you believe most of our career struggles are actually internal struggles in disguise?
Absolutely and honestly, 100%. These are
Alrighty.
internal struggles only. On the surface, as I just said through my example also, it looks like a job issue, a boss issue, a lack of opportunity issue. But when you really sit with it, a lot of it comes down to your thought patterns, your belief system, emotional conflicts. Since our childhood, we've been taught that our job is going to be the ultimate goalpost of our lives. All
Hmm.
right. When we reach that goalpost, we crib about the same job. So it is a pattern, it is a thought that I'm creating towards that job, which once was my dream, is now I'm tripping about. So actually, May, wherever and whoever is sitting at whatever position in their own careers and whatever struggles that they are going through, someday they actually dreamt of having this in their lives.
What are you saying? You think people would have knowingly, unknowingly thought about a circumstance and that is what is actually manifesting?
See, you choose a path and you have to agree that this path is going to have ups and downs.
Hmm.
In life also, life runs like this, right? On a ECG monitor also, it runs like
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
This means the person is alive. If there's a straight line, it means
You're
death.
done. Yeah.
You're done, right? So you can't be, on a journey, on a movement, on a plan or on a path and have a straight line. There has to be an up and a down. People actually dream for a certain goal, but they
Hmm.
don't. They don't sign up for the ups and downs. And when those ups and downs come in their lives, they actually are not able to deal with it. That is
Hmm.
what the problem is. So that's why I said that, a lot of career struggles that happen with a person is most of the times because of the patterns, beliefs, and emotional conflicts that person is already having within themselves. If there would be no problem in office, no, they would figure out a reason to crib about the boss. If the
Hmm.
boss is nice, they would figure out a reason to crib about the probably working hours, probably leave policy, because it's our and honestly telling, there is a concept called, there's a mentality called caveman's mentality, all right? So when we used to live in caves back then, the survival emotion, the survival instinct of a human being was to be fearful, to always remain in fear and anxiety. Why? Because that time there were only two needs that a human being was supposed to fulfill. You have to go out, hunt, and bring in food, and of course, shelter and security. For both of those situations, if you were not fearful, no, you would die. Because if I'm not scared and I'm not quickly going out and hunting my food and coming back into the cave, animals would, hunt me down.
Hmm.
If I'm not worried that how will I survive the next day, I would die of hunger. If I'm not worried of the fire and I would barge into the fire, I would burn myself. So, these are the survival instinct, because us time pe we did not have many other reasons to accomplish, many other goalposts to accomplish. To survive, only eating and being safe was the primary thing that was needed. Right now, we don't have only these two requirements. Right
Hmm.
now, things have changed. But our DNA memory also contains that emotion of being fearful for survival. So
Hmm.
when you are at the job, even if asking for an extra day of leave feels like the boss is going to be upset and boss is going to just yell at me, you are actually, because of your own thought patterns, making a big deal out of it. You're
Hmm.
actually being more fearful than required.
Hmm.
Sometimes by logic you can explain the reason and you can get that granted for yourself. Sometimes if in I was just very recently, just yesterday, I was thinking of this, but in corporates, the junior people, especially in India, the junior people shy away from telling a no to their bosses. You keep on giving them work, they would never say that, oh no, I can't, I won't be able to do it. They would hardly come back to their boss and say that, can you just teach me how will I do it? Because rather than having an emotion that I can go and ask my boss, they have a fear that boss will judge me,
Yeah, yeah,
replace me. They will probably think that I'm not enough for this job. And rather than asking the right question, their brain and their patterns and their emotional conflict will tell them, no, no, don't ask, go ask ChatGPT. Even if you have to go back home, wake up entire night, do this project, don't let boss know, because
yeah.
he will think that you were not competent for this role.
Hmm.
That's a fearful emotional pattern that we carry in our heads.
Vansha, I just feel like when people are going to listen to this episode, when it's going to be out, then I feel like you're going to be challenging a lot of norms and a lot of thoughts. And I, I genuinely believe it's time things should be reversed and people should really challenge the way they're thinking, why they're thinking, and high time they bring about a change. And you're very right. It's just I feel it's got to do, of course, with judgment, but also with insecurity. And there are too many people competing for your job, which is something that makes you feel insecure. But one should actually believe in themselves, believe in the qualifications and skill set, and then bosses are there to guide you. Let's change the narrative and make it more accessible that way.
And I will just tell you one thing just to wrap this up.
Hmm.
In my career, people who have been more vocal
Hmm.
about their needs, about their asks towards their manager, have excelled better in their careers.
All
Because
right.
the managers have most of the times, unless the manager only is not, capable to hold that position
Hmm.
and is very insecure and all of that thing. If the manager is actually a leader, such people are always excelling in their careers under such managers. So we should actually come out of our fear instincts and actually, work upon what exactly I just told.
Yeah.
To
So
repeat myself.
everybody, this is a shout out to Vansha, and listen to what she's saying because she's in HR and she knows people. So this is how things have to change now. All right, I'm going to bring your interest to one of my favorite segments in your entire episode, which is seeing people beyond the job titles. You've spoken about seeing people as whole human beings rather than just the employees. We spoke about understanding and giving time and attention to emotions and how a person behaves, why they behave a certain way. How does leadership change when you start seeing people beyond the job titles, Vansha?
So, first thing that we need to actually understand, when a leader stops managing performances only and starts holding place for people,
Hmm.
things change. So you would always find a leader doing a great deal of achievements in his career when he would have a set of people supporting him in that journey of success. And you would always find such a leader not only managing their performances, also managing their lows in the careers, their emotional challenges that they're going through, and building a whole environment for them to actually thrive in that situation. So when actually you start looking at people beyond their job titles, you actually stop managing their performances and you start holding place for them as a human being. All right, so you see the human behind the role. You don't only see what exactly are the high points of the career of that person, you also see the fear, the
Hmm.
pressure, and the potential of that person. You also sense energy, not only the output,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Sometimes output may not arrive, but that energy will tell you that how passionate that person was exactly for that job.
Hmm.
However, the output did not turn up well. So you respond to that person and you respond to that employee with awareness and not authority. So
Hmm.
that's how, when a leaders start actually looking at, a person beyond the job title, awareness comes in and understanding at a human level comes in, and such teams thrive, beautifully in their careers.
All right. Tell us, many organizations say that they care about employees, but if you look at the culture, it often feels transactional. Why do you think that gap exists?
I feel because the world has evolved, but many systems are still operating in the past.
All right.
Earlier, work was largely about earning stability. Success is equal to doing well professionally. Personal fulfillment was not anybody's priority. Even if you go back in the past, and if I look at my father, just to do his job right, at the court was his whole soul success.
Hmm.
Morning time and evening time at home was only to relax,
Hmm.
right? Even today, if you see people who are brilliant at their work, but their identity is almost entirely defined by their career. You would
Hmm.
see a CEO whose wife would be fighting with that CEO that he does not give enough time to the kids.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because that CEO would actually be thinking that my success is only by being the best CEO of the country.
Hmm.
This
Hmm.
is not my job.
Yeah.
But, and that's what we need to evolve as humans. And when as humans we would evolve, organizations are being run by humans only. It's just about time that we understand that this change needs to come in. And as I said in the beginning, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So if you're a great CEO, you have to actually work upon the segment of your life, becoming the great father,
Hmm.
becoming the great husband, become a great friend, become a great, if you like cricketer. So people should not restrict their, whole personality, identity, and success towards only their professional thing, because life is just not about these 9-10 hours that we spend at work. Right? Coming back to the organization, new workforce is different. Like how we talk about Gen Zs, it
Yeah.
is very different. They still want growth and success, but they also want balance. They want
Hmm.
flexibility. They want care. And they want regular acknowledgement. I remember my mother worked for 40 years, 45 years in the same organization. There was no concept of being rewarded or getting recognized. It was a very slow process. You just be a teacher and then you retire.
Hmm. Hmm.
Slowly and gradually, whenever government would decide your pay grade would go up. And I used to ask my mama, Mom, don't you feel bored? Don't you want to do
Yeah.
beyond this? And then stability was so much more important than rest of the things to her. She said, "No, this is how it is supposed to be. This
Hmm.
is how you're supposed to go to the same place, do the same work for years,
Hmm.
wait for government to announce a pay grade change, and then do the same work again, probably at a higher salary, and then get retired." This generation does not want this.
Yeah.
This generation wants a kick-ass day in the office, then an evening plan back home, then of course a movie Dhurandhar to be seen on the first weekend,
Let's go.
and and full financial independence. So organizations have to actually look at people wholesomely, because that's how we are becoming right now.
Hmm. Hmm. Nicely answered. Okay, if leaders truly understood the emotional reality of their teams, how differently would they run their organizations? You gave a really nice example of a Gen Z, but let's hear it.
I think if leaders running the organizations would really understand, rather than only working on medical insurance policy, annual appraisals, standard policies that they make for the betterment of everybody working there, they would also, think about, from a perspective that, if is this something which is taking care of everything that an employee needs? Because an employee, in spite of having a medical insurance, in spite of having a great policy in place, would see unseen in a day of work,
Hmm.
would be emotionally disconnected, would be really lacking real conversation. You would find people coming to work, sitting with their laptops, going through a lot of emotional pains, and
Hmm.
not being able to talk to anybody, going back to their homes and just locking up their rooms, ordering from Swiggy and Zomato, and just coming back to the same pattern again next day.
Yeah.
So when leaders actually, create an environment wherein, beyond policies and processes, people feel seen and heard, and they know that I have a friend at office. And this is
Hmm.
not only leaders' responsibility as human beings put together as a community, it's everybody's responsibility. And as leaders, it becomes moral responsibility of a leader to take an extra effort to make this happen. So if you
True.
have become a leader, I would request all the leaders to actually think of this as their moral responsibility towards the society, that they are creating a space for their people wherein they are not going back home unseen. And it is
Hmm.
not always about a reward or a recognition. It's about creating a space wherein they can say no to things. They can come back to you and say, I don't know how to do it. Can you just explain me how to do it? Without being fearful about it. So creating an environment like this, wherein the organization actually builds a culture where people feel regretful when they are trying to resign from that place.
Hmm. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. This is so nice. I mean, it literally brought chills because I feel like it's interesting how the worlds are changing from when we used to work to now and understanding what is it that your employee who's sitting next door trying to think before delivering that Excel or before working on that marketing. presentation or something like that. It's really nice you peeling the layers and understanding what is it that they want. All right, we're going to bring you to the philosophy of personal excellence, which is something that you abide by. One idea you talk about beautifully is competing with yesterday's version of yourself. Where did this philosophy come from?
There is a research which has happened, and it says that on a daily basis, every human being goes through 60,000 to 70,000 thoughts. All right, and further into this study, it is said that out of those 70,000 thoughts, 95% of your thoughts are on repeat mode. All
Okay.
right, and out of those 95% thoughts, at least 90% thoughts are negative. That's how every human being's mind is trained. All
Okay.
right. Until the time we keep on working on this default thought pattern mode, we will not be able to bring about any kind of a bigger change in our lives.
Hmm.
Which means, if in case I am today thinking that probably I'm not doing enough in my life, the same thought pattern is going to repeat the next day. The same thought pattern is going to repeat the next day. Likewise, if 90% of my thoughts are repeating and are negative, that is what I'm going to manifest in my life. So, what I started actually working upon was that every time I was actually having a disempowered emotion, a thought process which was actually, initially used to go unnoticed, which I actually started noticing. I realized that actually my after every 2 hours did that break, and I realized that, oh my God, last 2 hours most of the things were negative. She was probably not talking to that colleague properly. We need to do something about it. The weather is not nice. This room has some problem. My chair is not working okay. My water bottle is not getting filled at the right time. Oh, my boss did not talk to me properly. Most of the times we were thinking about the things that are going wrong in our lives or can go wrong in our lives. When I realized and I understood the concept that I can still change it, I actually started, working upon, hitting myself like this. Whenever I would have an emotion which is actually trying to tell me something negative around my surroundings, I would just do this and send a signal to my body and my brain that this is not okay to be thought.
Okay.
This is not a big deal. You should not think like this. And how can you change this story?
Hmm.
Change this story right now. Your water bottle is not filled and the pantry boy is being careless. No, my water bottle is not filled. Probably the pantry boy is busy right now.
Yeah.
My boss did not talk nicely to me. Probably she must have had a very bad day today. Rather than thinking that she's judging me and she wants to chuck me out of the job. So likewise, there was so many instances that I had, not only me, with my people also. When we do this session, we realized that all of us had created such emotional patterns in our heads, and many of them were negative. That once we started working upon that, they could actually become a better version of themselves from yesterday, because this time they were not thinking what they were thinking yesterday. So it's a very beautiful thing to actually, stop living on a default mode. And actually, there's a very good exercise that we do in our sessions. So I would like you to do this exercise. Just show me your
All
hands
right.
like,
Okay.
and now clutch your hand like this. Okay.
Okay.
Now there would be one thumb which is on top.
Yeah.
Which one is it?
The left.
The left one. Then you just open back your hands again and do that once again. This time bring the right thumb up.
Got it. Okay.
How did it feel?
Different.
Different, right?
Yeah.
Unnatural, different. However, the other thumb is also yours, and
Yeah.
you've been doing this forever in your life. Whenever there was a need to clutch your hands like this, you would have been doing this like on a default mode.
Yeah.
The day you start putting your right thumb up, good enough for like 20 days now, from now,
Okay.
this would not feel unnatural and different. And that is what happens with our thought process as well. We just need to actually find out what is it that I'm thinking. Is it an empowering emotion or a disempowering emotion? If it is a disempowering emotion, I'm just not going to give more than 30 seconds of my lifetime to this thought. And if
Hmm.
it is a powerful emotion, I will overthink it. Because overthinking of bad thing is all default mode happening in our lives. If overthinking is my human nature, why not overthink about good things in my life?
Oh, wow.
So
Powerful.
I decided that if something, which is feeling negative or which is trying to tell me that something is not right around me, I will not give more than 30 seconds. And within 30 seconds, I will just do this, and a signal will go to my brain, oh, you thought something wrong.
Hmm.
And if in case something positive coming to my head, I will overthink about it. I will exaggerate to the way I want as per my fantasies. Oh wow, that person came and said hi to me. Wonderful. That person really likes to talk to me. That person really wants to spend time with me. Oh my God, I'm such a amazing human being. What do I do with my life? I'm a celebrity. So when you start talking to yourself like this, no, you would realize that your happiness is not any longer dependent upon anything external. It
Hmm.
is coming from within. Because you are deciding your vocabulary, you are deciding your environment, and you are just deciding your. And I'm not saying that this is all bookish knowledge. We actually can practice this, if not eliminate all of the negative thinking, because there are things which go negative in the day, it will minimize it.
Hmm.
And to start with, minimizing it is a great deal. Great deal.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful, Mancha. Learning so many things from you. Tell us, for someone feeling stuck in their career right now, what is the one mindset shift they can start for a change?
See, people stuck, people get stuck in their careers at various stages, and those stages can be different. A fresher can be stuck thinking that where do I start from?
Hmm. Hmm.
College done and everything done. My aspirations are something else. My passion is towards something else. But my education is only landing me this job. So most of the times it would happen. A fresher would do a certain qualification, and then after doing it, that person would realize that okay, fine, this is not what I want to do in my career. I want to do something totally different than this. That is one kind of being stuck. Another is a person who actually chose, most of the times it is women who actually chose to stay back in spite of all the education and all, stay back, take care of the kids, raise the family, and be the caretaker of the family so that everything else can function well. That person can feel stuck in the career when everything is settled, kids are grown up, and then she wants to start her career. The third kind of people would be people like us who are, in their middle, experience range, doing well in their lives, and right now trying to figure out where do I go from now, from
Hmm.
here to now. So these are the different levels of being stuck in the career. But to
Hmm.
all of those people, the answer is just one.
Which
I am
is
not behind. I am just starting from a different place.
lovely. Hmm.
I am not behind from that another batchmate of mine. She actually is a VP right now in a corporate, and I'm just a housewife. No, don't
Hmm.
talk to yourself negatively.
Hmm.
Just tell yourself that I'm not behind. While she was building upon her career, probably she did not spend enough time with her kids at home.
Hmm.
Her kids were being raised by a daycare person. That was her choice. It was my choice. I am starting from a different point. Probably the designation would not be VP. Probably the salary would not be that much. Probably my bond would be stronger with my
Hmm.
kids.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if she has gained something, she has lost something. I have gained something, I have lost something. We're all starting from a different stage and different point. And the day we actually start telling us this, we will start beating ourselves up. And we will not feel that we are stuck in our career. We will know for sure that this is a different starting point altogether. And
Hmm.
I'm the only one who needs to start from this starting point. So who says I'm stuck? I'm not. I'm just starting.
Mantra, I wasn't expecting this is going to be a mindset reset kind of a podcast, but I think we've gone beyond organizations and how to really think well and how can you mold the life. So what is this, a bonanza? Maybe it is of a podcast. All right, I'm going to bring you to the last segment of this episode. Now, this show is called Unapologetic Me for a particular reason. So, if I may ask, what is Vansha, the most unapologetic at this current stage in her life? What are you going to say?
I think I'm most unapologetic about not explaining my choices to anyone anymore. So,
Alrighty.
I initially used to feel guilty of spending extra time after work with my friends because I always thought my child is waiting back at home. And then
Hmm.
I used to make excuses, or I used to, feel, like a bad mother. Oh, I
Mhm.
shouldn't have gone for that party. And most of the early years of my elder one, I actually ignored all the, after office parties and all of those things because I was always living in a mode that my heart stop is this.
Hmm.
Even if there was somebody back at home taking care of the child, my heart stop was this. I just, restricted
Mother guilt.
myself. Yes. So mother guilt was something that ran on my head like, like a loop. And when I would not be able to do something for someone, I would explain that why exactly the intention was not bad and why exactly I couldn't do it. Sometimes there were times when I was not really able to do that well in my career. I would just talk to my batchmates, my ex-colleagues, and I would explain that what exactly did go wrong and why exactly the career did not scale that well as much as theirs is. Now I don't feel the need to do all of these things because now my mindset has totally changed. So now everything that I do in my life, it feels like that's a choice that I have made.
Hmm.
And because it is a choice that I have made, it is my responsibility.
Hmm.
And rather than now thinking of that situation, I told this to you because I used to think like that, but I don't no longer think like that. That I wouldn't call that a mother's guilt anymore. I would
Hmm.
say that was my priority.
Hmm.
I was not being guilty of it. I probably prioritized my child, beyond anything else. That evening was not that priority, that big a priority to me, probably, and that's why. So rather than utilizing a word like guilt towards it, I would say I prioritized well. I chose well, and because I chose well, I should not be apologetic about it.
Let's go. Good answer. Alrighty, what is a belief you hold strongly about work or life that most people might disagree with?
It's again in our training that we think that you have to exhaust yourself to prove your worth at
Hmm.
workplace,
Hmm.
right? A lot of people still believe that overworking, constantly pushing, or being busy all the time is the way to succeed.
Hmm.
And there are lots of quotes that run on a loop that if you can't handle stress, you can't be successful,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
stress is a part of the journey. But I've seen the opposite. When you're more aligned and when you're more clear and emotionally grounded, you actually do better at work because you are not forcing anything. It is happening naturally. So I think success does not come from burnout at all. It
Hmm.
totally comes from clarity and energy. And that's something which many people don't really agree because we've been conditioned to equate struggles with
Hmm.
values.
All right. Now, I'm going to ask you something. I think a lot of females think about it, maybe, but I want you to reflect and tell me. Is there something about your personality that you once tried to tone down, but today you refuse to apologize for?
I got married when I was like 23 and a half.
Okay.
And yeah, it was a love marriage. And I thought all is sorted. I knew him well and everything was, as per the plan. But, suddenly something's changed in my life. And I can't blame one person for this. I would say the entire society and the way the society looked at me really changed. They really wanted me to be it started from the wedding day itself. They actually, I felt that people were judging me for smiling more, for talking more on the stage, for probably having an opinion. It goes back to 14 years from now, so of course things were different at that point in time. Then whenever there was a disagreement I would have with somebody's opinion in the family, in the new family, my own parents would say to just tone myself down, not being so argumentative, be a little flexible. So there were many times, I actually ended up, thinking, and my husband would also say that, why is it such a big problem for you? Just do it now.
Hmm.
So all of those times, I did it. I actually, toned it down. But it not did not feel right because it wasn't about winning an argument and it wasn't about, proving my point, but it just did not feel right that why exactly am I supposed to be changed
Yeah.
as a person when I get married. So I don't think so. I think that time for a very limited period of time, I did try to, you know, uh, validate everybody's expectations and be the good girl that they thought that I should be. I wasn't a bad girl ever, but I thought that by not doing the things that they want me to do, I am being a bad girl. And I try to tone down my own personality. But now, when I explain to everybody, not really now, but eventually when I started explaining to everybody that this is something that I don't want to do. I don't want to compromise. I want to have a certain style of dressing. I want to have a certain style of decision making in my life and all of those things. Right now, I feel that I should not have even done that much also because I was not disrespecting anybody. I was just being me. And why just being me was a problem.
Yeah, yeah. Lovely. All right, last question. If the younger version of you, the girl growing up in that small town, could see your life today, what would surprise her the most?
I don't think so. She would be surprised. I think, since my first standard annual function day, when I won the award of an all-rounder there, when my teachers and my parents saw that potential in me, and when I had so many people from the audience coming and telling me that you will go a long way, I silently decided that I will go a long way. So I
All
was
right.
just quietly working upon it, and I'm already in the middle of the journey. It's not the end of the journey as yet. I am probably 20 steps ahead from that spot till now, and there are hundreds more to come. But I don't think so that girl will be surprised. This is something which I always knew, and I was sure that you have to start carving, yourself in this way.
Yeah, beautiful. How nicely answered. And I feel like there's nothing more strong than a female who knows her mind and knows where she's headed. On that note, we've had a fantastic discussion and a conversation with you. Vansha, this is my moment of shine. I'm going to ask you, what did you feel of the entire episode and what do you feel of the content, the thoughts of just unapologetically? What do you feel?
Yeah, I really should say that, when we were going through this, I never thought that this is going to go so deep. In my mind, when I thought that I will be speaking to you, I really thought that we will be talking all corporate and, surface level things. And then when we got down into it and one step after the another, and you just got me there. I think I'm mind blown by the way you've carried this out. And, it didn't feel like that I've been speaking for more than, good 1.5 hours, and it was so beautiful. You actually made me go back into my childhood and think about the things that probably I was not really thinking these days. So yeah, I am really thankful for having me over this podcast, and I am in love with this.
All
Yeah,
right,
it was
thank
it
you.
was very nice.
All of your words mean so much to me. You know about that already. And thank you for, again, giving time. I know what a busy schedule you have and so many engagements. I'm just glad it worked out. And of course, we're going to continue staying in touch, but it means a lot when someone's in their journey and how you felt about the entire hard work. Um, just made my day.
Likewise, you made my day.
All right, I'm going to pack this episode.
Sure.
Vansha, this conversation reminds us of something incredibly important. In a world moving rapidly towards automation and efficiency, the real opportunity for leaders lies in something far more timeless, which is understanding people deeply. Your journey shows that leadership isn't just about strategy or systems, it's about helping individuals become more aware, more grounded, and more aligned with who they truly are. Thank you for sharing your story with us. And to everyone listening, this has been another episode of Unapologetic Me, where we explore journeys of people who are building meaningful lives and careers while staying true to themselves. Until next time, this is me, your host, Ekta Khurana, and I'll see you in the next episode. Till then, live your life unapologetically. Thank you.
Thank you so much.